All right, so we've got a pretty interesting set of articles and research you sent over
Yeah.
about raw pet food and this whole bird flu situation and what the FDA is saying about it all.
Mhm.
It's pretty timely with, all this avian influenza that seems to be everywhere.
Right.
What really has me curious is how it's all impacting our pets,
Yeah.
especially those that are on raw food diets.
You're right. It's a connection a lot of people probably don't make right away.
Right.
I mean, we all know bird flu is affecting birds in every state now.
Yeah.
But the concerning thing is it can actually jump to cats
Oh,
through
wow.
contaminated raw pet food.
That's a little unsettling.
Yeah.
And from what I'm reading in these articles,
Uh-huh.
it's not just a hypothetical risk.
No.
There have been cats getting sick and even dying from H5N1.
Exactly. And that's why the FDA is now advising pet food companies to kind of reevaluate their safety protocols,
Okay.
specifically suggesting things like heat treatment to eliminate the virus.
Yeah. So the FDA is taking notice, but it sounds like these recommendations are voluntary at this point.
For now, yeah. It's more of a strong suggestion, I'd say, than a hard and fast rule.
Okay.
But if we keep seeing these cases of cats getting sick,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if the FDA stepped in with some stricter regulations.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like they're giving the industry a chance to self-regulate
Right.
before they have to take more drastic measure.
Precisely. And they're clearly keeping a close eye on how this situation unfolds.
This might sound basic, but why are cats particularly vulnerable to this strain of bird flu? Is there something that makes them more susceptible than other animals?
That's a great question. And honestly, one that researchers are still trying to fully understand.
Okay.
Early research suggests that cats might have specific cellular receptors
Uh,
that make them more susceptible to this particular strain.
Interesting.
It's not totally clear yet, but it's an area of active research for sure.
So there's like a biological reason behind it, not just that they're more likely to eat contaminated food.
Right.
That's interesting. And it seems like the FDA is particularly worried about raw pet food,
Yeah.
which is often marketed as this like natural and healthy option.
Yes, and it's understandable why pet owners are drawn to it.
Right.
It's often promoted as being closer
Yeah.
to a cat's natural diet and all that.
Right.
But as we're seeing with this outbreak, without proper safeguards, it can pose a serious health risk.
Yeah. So for those listening who are feeding their cats raw food, what's the main takeaway here?
Yeah.
What should they be doing to protect their pets?
The simplest and most effective way to eliminate the risk is to cook the food thoroughly.
Okay.
Just like with chicken. For us,
Yeah.
cooking pet food to an internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit
Okay.
effectively kills the virus.
So we're talking about actually cooking the raw food,
Yes.
not just thawing it out.
Exactly. And just to be clear, freezing doesn't kill the bird flu virus either.
Oh, okay.
The heat from cooking is what disrupts the virus's structure and makes it harmless.
So it's like how you can't just freeze raw chicken for dinner
Right.
and expect it to be safe.
Exactly.
Heat is really the key.
A good analogy. Heat is the most reliable way to neutralize the threat in this case.
So cooking is critical. What about the companies making this raw pet food?
Hmm.
How are they reacting to these FDA recommendations?
It's a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Some companies, like We Feed Raw that you mentioned in one of the articles,
Yeah.
are being quite proactive. They highlight their rigorous safety protocols,
Uh-huh.
including something called high-pressure processing, or HPP.
HPP. That sounds intense.
It is. Imagine subjecting those pathogens to the kind of pressure you'd find at the bottom of the ocean.
Wow.
That's essentially what HPP does.
Okay.
It uses extreme pressure to disrupt the structure of bacteria and viruses, making them inactive.
So it's like a natural pressure cooker for pathogens.
You got it.
It's fascinating that they can use pressure to kill those harmful microbes without actually cooking the food.
Exactly. It's a non-thermal method, meaning it doesn't rely on heat, but it's been proven very effective at eliminating pathogens.
So it seems like some companies are taking this seriously and investing in these extra safety measures.
Yeah.
But what about the others? Are all raw pet food companies being this transparent?
Unfortunately, no. Some have remained silent on the issue, which I find a bit concerning.
Yeah.
It raises questions about their commitment to transparency and safety,
Right.
especially during an outbreak like this.
That's a good point. And for those of us buying this food,
Yeah.
it makes it difficult to know what we're actually getting.
Right.
How do we as consumers figure out which brands are taking the necessary precautions?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It really highlights the need for pet food companies to be more upfront about their safety practices.
It's like we need to be more informed consumers and really do our homework before buying.
You got it.
But where do we even start?
Absolutely. We can't just assume all pet food companies are prioritizing safety.
Right. So where do we start? What can listeners do to become more informed about the pet food they're buying?
Well, first and foremost, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Okay.
Reach out to the companies directly
Okay.
and ask about their specific safety protocols,
Right.
particularly regarding the bird flu.
So like what kinds of questions?
You could ask things like, do they use HPP or other methods to eliminate pathogens? What are their sourcing practices like?
Okay.
A company that's truly committed to transparency should be happy to answer those questions.
Right. If they're hesitant to share information, that might be a red flag.
Exactly. And also take a close look at the labels.
Okay.
While they might not explicitly mention bird flu prevention measures, they can provide clues about the company's overall commitment to quality and safety.
What should we be looking for on those labels?
Look for information about the sourcing of ingredients.
Okay.
Are they using poultry from reputable suppliers with strong biosecurity measures?
Right.
Also pay attention to the processing methods. Are there any indications of safety measures beyond just the basic requirements?
Gotcha. So it's about reading between the lines a little bit.
Exactly.
And looking for those extra signs of commitment to
Right.
safety.
And don't underestimate the power of talking to your veterinarian.
Oh.
They can offer personalized advice based on your cat's specific needs and health history,
Right.
and can even steer you toward more reputable brands.
Yeah, that's so important. Vets are such a valuable resource when it comes to pet health.
For sure.
You know, as we're talking about all this, it makes me think about the broader trend of people wanting more natural,
Yeah.
less processed foods
Yeah.
for themselves and their pets. But like with this bird flu situation,
Right.
there can be a trade-off between those natural ideals
Yeah.
and safety concerns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. It's a complex issue we grapple with in human nutrition as well.
Right.
This desire for raw, unadulterated foods.
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge those potential risks and take precautions.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That balance might look different
Yeah.
for each individual and their pet.
Right.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Looking ahead, do you think this bird flu outbreak could change the landscape of the pet food industry?
It's definitely a possibility, I think.
Okay.
Right now, the FDA is taking a wait-and-see approach,
Right.
offering guidance rather than mandates.
Yeah.
But if we continue to see these cases linked to raw food, I wouldn't be surprised if they implemented stricter regulations.
Would that be a bad thing?
Not necessarily. I mean, some regulations can be beneficial.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's like seatbelts in cars.
Exactly.
They might be a little inconvenient, but ultimately they save lives.
Precisely. And in the case of pet food,
Yeah.
regulations could help ensure a baseline level of safety and transparency,
Right.
giving consumers more peace of mind.
Okay, so we've talked about the risks, the
Uh-huh.
precautions, the potential for future regulations.
Yeah.
What about those pet owners who are just firmly committed to a raw food diet? What advice would you give them?
Yeah.
Especially in light of this bird flu situation.
I understand the appeal of raw feeding. This idea of providing food that's closer to what they would eat in the wild is compelling.
Yeah.
But it's essential to approach it with a healthy dose of caution
Okay.
and a commitment to doing your due diligence.
So don't just dive in without doing your research.
Exactly. Talk to your vet, research reputable brands that are transparent about their sourcing and safety practices.
Right.
And most importantly, during this bird flu outbreak, cook that raw food thoroughly
Okay.
to eliminate the risk.
That seems like sound advice.
I think so.
It's all about being informed and making responsible choices for our pets.
Right.
Speaking of being informed, one of the articles you sent mentioned an organization called AAFCO. What exactly is their role in all this?
AAFCO, or the Association of American Feed Control Officials, plays a crucial role in setting standards for pet food.
Oh, okay.
They establish nutritional guidelines and help ensure that pet food labels are accurate and informative.
So they're kind of like the watchdogs of the pet food industry,
That's a good way to put it.
making sure companies are meeting certain standards.
They don't have regulatory authority themselves,
Okay.
but they work with state and federal agencies to enforce those standards.
That's good to know. So if listeners wanted to do their own research, AFCO's website would be a good place to start.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They have a wealth of information for consumers,
Okay.
including guidance on reading those pet food labels
Huh.
and understanding nutritional requirements.
It seems like there's a whole world of information out there for pet owners
There is.
who are willing to dig a little deeper.
There is a ton. It really is a journey becoming a more informed pet food consumer.
Yeah.
We're constantly learning new things, especially with,
Right.
situations like this bird flu outbreak that are always evolving.
Yeah, it's like we have to stay curious and be willing to adapt as new information comes out.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's about being proactive and advocating for our pets' health.
So to recap, what are the key takeaways for listeners who are concerned about the bird flu and how it might be impacting their pets, especially those on a raw food diet?
The biggest takeaway is cooking that raw pet food thoroughly,
Okay.
especially during this outbreak.
Right.
Reaching that internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit,
Right.
that effectively neutralizes the virus.
And we know that freezing doesn't do the trick.
Mm.
Gotta be.
Exactly. Another key point is transparency.
Okay.
Don't hesitate to reach out to those companies
Right.
and ask about their safety protocols, particularly regarding, the bird flu.
Yeah, what are they doing specifically?
Right. Ask about their sourcing, their testing procedures, and whether they're using additional safety measures like we talked about, high-pressure processing.
It sounds like we need to be savvy shoppers, reading those labels carefully, looking for those signs
For sure.
of a commitment to safety.
And consulting your veterinarian is always a good idea.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They can offer personalized advice
Right.
based on your pet's individual needs, risk factors.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive.
Good.
It's made me realize even choosing pet food can be
Yeah,
surprisingly complex.
it really is.
Yeah.
And I think this whole situation with the bird flu highlights how interconnected our world really is.
Yeah.
What affects one species, even birds, can have a ripple effect on others, including our pets.
It's a good reminder that we're all part of a delicate ecosystem.
Exactly. And it just underscores the importance of staying informed, asking those questions, and advocating for the health and well-being of all creatures.
Well said. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Just this, the bond we share with our pets is profound, Their well-being is entrusted to us.
Yeah.
So let's continue to learn, question, and make choices that prioritize their health and safety.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us
Thanks for having me.
on this journey of exploration, and we'll see you next time as we delve into another fascinating topic.